And you gonna murder this one and murder that one. Talking all that bullshit. I'm gonna put it to you like this, yo.
This is for the nerds, this is for the brainiacs, this what we deserve. Go ahead and play it back, you ain't gonna touch me, you not gonna do nothing, you are not above me, I bet you wish you was me, I know it, I know.
What is poppin', everybody? And welcome back to another special episode of the Only Friends podcast. Well, you know, it's me and my only friends, which includes, but it's not limited to, the one, the only, Katie Stone. How you feeling today?
Oh, hey.
Wow, hey, Katie.
Yeah.
It's an honor to get thrown to you.
What's going on?
I was not expecting that. Hello. Good morning.
Man, after the one and only, I really thought I was getting it thrown to me.
This guy.
Fuck.
Yeah. Sorry, bud.
Always a bridesmaid, never a bride, you know? Man, it's just unbelievable. Welcome, Katie.
You
made your journey. Drove all the way here from Texas.
Yes.
You're gonna need to explain that one to me. It's 2024 and you're an adult. Take a fucking airplane.
Sometimes you just like to have your car.
This is like drinking a glass of
Can we
milk.
please just listen to the wisdom over here?
Yes. Okay.
Please.
All right. In exchange for what? 30 hours driving cross country?
No, I mean, we made it like a whole trip. Like we went from Houston to Dallas. We did, the horse farm.
Yeah.
All right. The long trek from Houston to Dallas.
At my friend's, horse farm to see the babies because it's foaling season. So it's the kind of time that you want to go see some baby horses. And
I'm sorry. You're going to need to explain foaling season.
Foaling season, yeah.
Is that like mating season?
Spring is
No,
when...
it's after mating season.
Right. It's the
result of
mating season.
You want your babies to survive. You want them to survive in warm weather. You want them to be born during warm weather. So that's why this is... Right, like March, April is kind of when foaling season
Same
starts.
with like deer, right? Like
Yeah.
the deer have the fawns in
Yeah.
April.
And it's cool for little kids. My
And
son
fish.
is 8, so it's he gets to go up and see the baby horses, and it's a fun experience for him. And
There's a horse farm right across the street from my house.
there is. Are there still horses there?
There's 3.
Gosh,
There's way more than that.
poor things.
Really?
Yeah.
I've only seen 3.
There's
hot out
2
there.
horse farms and they're across from each other.
It's the same property.
One has a stable of like 6. The other one has
okay.
2 outside for sure.
It's the same property. One is like they have the what's it called when you like parade them around in the circle?
Lunging.
Sure. Yeah, lunging. That sounds... Lunging to me is what Tony Horton has LaManna doing every morning.
I thought you were going to say Antonio Esfandiari.
R.I.P. One of the greatest prop bets of all time. He'll never be back at the Bahamas. We have a fun show today. We got a lot on deck. It's going to be a very yin and yang type of show, if you will. We're going to start off with a lot of celebratory WSOP bracelets. Some fun poker was played this weekend. We didn't even put it in the run of show or anything, but there
Holy
was
shit.
a wild fucking game at Hustler.
I was locked in, bro.
I didn't see a second of it, but I heard it was interesting.
I was on the 250K and I was on Hustler and I couldn't get my eyes off of either one of them. It was. I felt like a sick human being. Like my head hurt after because like what was going on my right side of the screen and what was going on my left side of my screen, it was just absurd. My brain was boggled. It was so much fun.
I think Ryan Garcia will be in rehab by the end of 2024.
What do you end of 2024? The end of the week,
Bro.
I'll give him 6 months.
I saw somebody, I think it was Joey Sal tweeted, who do you think's been consuming more sodium? And it's a side-by-side of Ryan Garcia and Jake Schindler in the 250K just like bloated out of his fucking mind. Man, it must be good to be eating off all that stolen money. For both of them, actually, come to think of it.
Wow.
Just,
They're getting those glizzies.
yeah,
There's a lot of sodium in those glizzies.
South Point Glizzies. Yeah, I didn't catch any of the Hustler stream, but I heard it was it did what it was intended to do. I think there was like 25,000 concurrent.
it was insane.
What was the $1 million game concurrence?
I have no idea.
Was it in that ballpark?
I would think it'd be more. I thought 25,000 was low for this group.
Oh, man, I don't know. That seems like a lot for a...
Think about who it is. Yeah, I know it's poker, but think about who's there.
Neymar's a big deal.
Excuse me.
Wow.
The fuck?
Yeah, that was weird.
A lot of carbonation over
Neymar's
there.
a big deal, but did his platform promote his appearance at all?
I think all he needs to do is tweet, to be quite honest.
Or did it, because
wonder.
you know,
And he's teamed up with PokerStars,
you never
right?
know
I think
what
so, yeah.
he's allowed to do or what he should be doing.
Right.
It doesn't always get done.
I think they I'm pretty sure they cross promoted on Ninja's stream, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
I think he streamed simultaneously, and maybe that's where a lot of the hype was coming from.
Yeah, he obviously didn't post anything on his Twitter or anything.
Neymar didn't.
No.
he did not.
No.
Yeah, that's kind of weird.
You know, actually, it's not.
But-
He probably is not allowed to. Like his contract's through Nike and
No,
stuff.
right, yeah. I'm not saying it's weird in that he didn't do it. I guess I'm kind of torn. Like, I kind of understand this aspect. You know, for the first handful of seasons of Poker Out Loud, obviously this is not the same as what Hustler just did. But we would always try to get big names, like big promotable names. But if they don't play ball with you, it doesn't matter.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you could have Ivy, but if he's never gonna promote the product, people just aren't gonna know. You can't keep saying like, I have Ivy, because like people are just tone deaf. It's your own audience that you're speaking to anyway. You need the outside audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's just a logistical thing too, right? Like these guys are just kind of out doing what they want to do, and their PR teams or their management teams have no clue
Yeah.
what they're doing. And they've
Right.
agreed to promote something, they've agreed to do something fun, and they have good intentions. But when it comes down to it, sometimes they're not the ones in control of their platforms.
Yeah, and then they have their their team chasing him after.
Exactly.
Like, what did you do?
He was the big winner for the night, right?
Well, yeah, Keating decided to do. I can't even take it. Keating had a flush draw and one over and decided to run it 1 million times with them for like 50,000 a card each time. It was. I have no.
Oh, really?
Yeah, look at it right here. This is it. He has a 9 to a flush draw, ace high flush draw, ace 3, and they decided to just keep running it and running it and running it. They were like.
And each time they were gambling more, or it was just for different portions of the pot?
No. So like I think they just did like 50K a card or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Afterwards.
That's fun.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Real fun.
Love me a little degeneracy. I ain't mad at that. I can't remember who put this other tweet up, but I saw it earlier, and it said it was a quote tweet of a Jimmy Butler article from during COVID.
Okay.
And it said Jimmy Butler. Like the title of the article was Jimmy Butler charges $20 for a cup of coffee from his bubble in the COVID or whatever. And somebody just quote tweeted and said, "I'm sorry, but I'm not calling 3-bets on the river from a guy who's this frugal." He played tight.
Yep.
Well, he bounced right after he won, right?
He played for a little bit while after, but
Oh,
yeah,
Oh,
he
I
did
thought
leave.
somebody was belly aching about him leaving too
Yeah, I
early.
mean, he lost like the stand-up round for a round, and then he. Whatever.
Honestly, I think that's the. I know it goes against everything that our core community stands for,
that was best.
but like for outsiders looking in, I actually think that like breaking all of the etiquette of poker is one of the best things to watch as a viewer. Where it's just like a guy just like wins a 200K pot and he's like, "Rats!"
See ya.
I'm out of here.
Going home now.
I get to leave now, right? I can take this to the cashier and they're gonna give me money in return. Yeah, like I'm out. It's even better if it's like a tournament.
Quite honestly, Jimmy was a lot of fun though. Like for what the times he did talk.
Yeah.
Actually, him and Dan got into it about something. I don't know what it was, but
Oh, I forgot Blitz was there.
yeah. By the way, he was like Lewis
Oh, that's what it
Spencer
was.
of
Blitz
the
is
game.
the one that was complaining about him leaving.
Blitz sucks, man.
He played so
sucks.
tight and just
He's
like,
such a nobody believes me. I forget who I was texting with. I was like, this motherfucker shut me out of so many games because I give too much action. Like, he's so fucking tight and he's so proud of the fact that he's like in his own warped mind a professional who, like, you know, finds all the best spots, gets to play all these billionaires heads up and like all this other bullshit. He's just literally like the most miserable nit that you've ever come across, and he has all of the miserable nit characteristics, right?
he's not even good for the
Does he
game, like in
does he
any
claim
way,
to be a
shape, or
professional?
form.
I didn't think that was his thing.
I mean, he claims he won the most money in all of poker.
Well,
and
yeah.
he's probably
there's,
right.
There's a difference between that and claiming that you're a professional, though, right?
What the fuck else does he do to make money?
I don't know. Doesn't he have like some weird businesses that he like?
Okay, is he a professional in those? I mean, they're all the same, right? Like, he just spends time doing shit that he's not
I
that good
just thought
at.
his thing was that he never promoted himself as a professional poker player.
Of course not, because then he wouldn't get the spots he gets. But like, you know, if that's where when you claim that you've made the most amount of money of anybody in poker and you have no other source of income, I don't know what else to call you, you know? But either way, like, he's just like, he has all the nit tendencies. the pointing fingers at other people that are already doing the same thing that he's doing. You know, like, oh, this guy's so fucking tight. Get him out of the game. Like,
they're complaining to the dealer to like to run out quicker because he just couldn't take the suspension.
Fucking Oaken every day.
Really?
Every day. There's nothing I enjoy more than whenever like a dealer hangs on a flop card, like the door card.
That's what you were saying last week.
He just snaps.
Yeah,
he just fucking snaps. He can't take it. He goes, could you spread the flop? Oh, and if a left-handed dealer comes in there, it's over.
They should start putting the flop up one at a time.
Oh, I love that so much.
Honestly, we've been playing this heads-up PLO match for like the last few months. I might hire you to deal it.
Yes. Let's do it.
For anybody who has no reference, Lamanna's dexterity with a deck of cards is non-existent.
What are you talking about? Where did you come up with that?
Watching you just turn over a flop one card at a time here.
I never did that.
Oh, absolutely.
Never.
Absolutely.
Never.
Honestly, I'm pretty sure at its origins.
This is how I got the tortoise nickname.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure at its
You
origins.
watched me deal once, and
you
you're
were
like,
the guy
"He's
who
a
held the
tortoise."
2 cards up whenever he was looking at them. You've just been old since you're out of the womb. You know, there's nothing you can do about it.
I don't like the way you're painting me in this light.
That's all right. You're gonna survive.
You're the biggest gaslighter out of everybody.
Oh, come on.
You really are.
Only you.
You talk about getting gaslit. You've been gaslighting people literally since we were in elementary school. Berkey used to say, he's like, oh yeah, I like to get in arguments with people. I know I'm wrong, but I will just argue
Only
to death
Simmons.
to try to get them to believe what I'm saying.
He should
That's
have
the literal definition of gaslighting. You've been gaslighting people before that was even a term.
He's not wrong. I can refute.
It really was only just John.
I can refute nothing he said, and you know what? I'm better for it. How much better?
I've got so much joy out of it.
I've gotten so good at like understanding how to steel man arguments by taking the losing side.
Ah, I see.
And jamming it down someone's throat. You know,
Yeah.
man,
Way to turn it into a positive.
Yeah, that was pre-Google. Those days were good. All right, speaking of positives, let's talk about some of these winners. First and foremost, huge shout out to my man Frankie Funk. He won the 10K Super Turbo.
Let's go, Frankie.
Sorry, Guava, I'm
Right.
sure you have these in some sort of order, and I'm not going to do it that way. But really happy for him. Good, young, up-and-coming crusher. Proud of him to have his first bracelet. But I got to tell you, man. Oh, it's the second? Oh, it's an online one. Online ones don't count, man.
They count.
Was it online?
They don't count till I win one.
I was going to say they count because when I eventually win one, I don't want it to count.
When I win one, let me tell you, they're going to count more.
Yeah.
But until that day, they don't count.
Rats, the whole funk.
So even though I'm happy for him, I have to tell you that the entire Bellagio was just glued to the TV rooting for Shota. We need our man back. And no way for him to come back faster than to win a tournament for, what was first, 600 and something?
640.
So he got like 4 and change.
Yeah, probably.
Shota, hello, big fish.
So I'm assuming he's a regular there.
Yeah. We were gonna make a 10th chair for him yesterday. I figured he was a little flush. I think he was out celebrating, singing a little karaoke. So yeah, congratulations to both of them. Happy to see one of ours kind of have a nice score. Secondly, oh man, there are so many, and I forgot to click all the links, so I have to go through real quick. Let's see, what do we got here? Okay, so the 10K Raz Championship. Big shout out to Brandon Shaq Harris. I think this is his third final table of the summer.
He's been in the mix every
Man's
time.
on a mission. Unfortunately, he came up short in this one, as one tends to do in the game of Raz.
It's tough.
I feel like you don't play to a winner in Raz. I feel like you just ultimately play to a final loser.
Yep.
I mean, technically,
It kind of is.
it really is.
I mean, technically.
Congratulations, George.
Congratulations, Jordy.
You're the biggest
Yep.
loser in the field.
It's funny. So Jordy is we've lost him to the crypto world.
Yeah.
He's big into crypto now. I actually watch his podcast. It's called Steady Lads.
Oh shit, let's go.
Great podcast. They do it once a week. Him and Taki and the gang.
Okay.
And it's so funny. So someone said they need to start a coin now. George with hat.
Sure. Fly off the shelf,
Right?
kids.
Yeah, I'll buy it up.
It's literally just George with a hat.
Right. There he is. George with hat.
Congrats to George, though, winning the Raz Championship. Was that? I think that was his first bracelet.
It was. He said it was 15 years in the making.
I almost don't want to win one to have to recount how many years it was
Yeah.
in the making. No, don't worry. I won't win one.
It's not gonna. You don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, it's not gonna be a big deal. So it looks like that was good for 400K. Is that right? Oh no, 282. Small field.
Yeah, small field.
Yeah, people don't like the Raz, huh?
I mean, you gotta have a certain level of pain tolerance. I
Shit,
think, to play
Conrad, that might have been yours, man.
Yeah.
You could have been in there. 10K Raz.
I mean,
118 people. Ren Lin got
That could-
third.
Yeah.
that's because Ren is the GOAT.
Lady
You don't
Gaga.
even know how to. You don't even have to know the rules of the game. You just get in there and just throw chips around.
All I know is I have to be the biggest loser. I will be fine.
Yeah, who's better at making the nut low than you?
Other
I
dudes.
mean, if you had to find somebody to make the nut low, wouldn't you pick Conrad out of the group?
Like, no problem.
Yeah.
Honestly, you know what? I'm going to play all the mix next year.
Yeah,
Let's
of course.
go.
That's
Mixed
100%.
Yeah.
No, I'm just playing it.
Oh, you just firing.
No, I'm just going to win everything, so it doesn't matter.
He's going to
want a
start with the
piece.
deuce to 7 win and then just roll it over into everything else.
True.
You know, it's nice
Sounds
and
like
easy.
a solid
Only
plan.
next year.
The 1500 Super Turbo Bounty, no limit hold'em freeze out. That's a mouthful. 2,100 entries, 2.8 million in the prize pool, and Peter Park wins his first bracelet for 240K.
Is that a one day?
Spider-Man.
Wow, shout
I
out to
think
Mark
so.
Dube.
Yeah.
Getting second
Mark
there.
Dube. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm
Doobie.
like, was this some weird nickname?
Yeah.
I don't know Mark Dube.
He's an online guy.
A lot of online guys.
I feel like that's like almost like an online bracelet, right? Because you can win it one day.
Yeah.
Not to take away.
I don't know.
Just win.
The final table may have came back the second day. That's what they did for the 10K.
They did.
Yeah. Oh, they did.
Wait, no.
I think they put
I'm
it
not
down
sure.
in one
Might
day.
have been one day.
Yeah.
I really like the bounty until I don't. But
Yeah.
I
You
fucked
had a
it.
good time. You were playing the 10K bounty?
I fucked it so
Yeah.
bad.
Well,
I
Tell
just
us
don't.
about it.
I just, you know how you have to have a gear in your mind of like, I'm going to play well? It's like I have that gear in cash and it's how the money goes in. Like I just have, I have an internal compass for how money goes in.
you just don't know how to play well.
I don't know how to put money in the middle in tournaments. Like it went under the gun 7 opens off of 50. The cutoff who covers him 3 bets. And I have ace 10 suited on the button and 18 big blinds. And I just don't know how all my money doesn't go in here.
It just doesn't.
It was literally, you should have seen the chat. It was literally every like 3 minutes. Berkey's like, is this right? Is this a spot? Do I do this? Is this right?
Yeah. Because every time I would text the chat, I would be like, okay, so I was all in here.
All right.
Is that okay?
No.
No, you got a lot of
you got a
things
couple
right.
of them, right?
Yeah, you got,
The ace 10 was wrong.
Yeah,
the ace 10 was
was bad.
wrong. Yeah. I think Lynn's word was ignited.
Yeah.
Ignited it.
Yeah.
Set it
Yeah.
on fire.
We were 30%.
Yeah.
Under the gun head kings. Never fucking win those things, man. It's so unfair.
Sorry.
It's really
rough life
unfair.
out there, man.
Shout out to Mustafa. God, I was gonna try to just roll with it and like
you
just pull it off.
Yeah.
I just too many vowels. Hair dairy, hatery, hattery.
All I know is hair dairy is not correct.
Yeah.
No,
can't-
there's no R. Hatery. I like this. Let's go with hatery.
I think it's Haddadi.
Haddadi. There we go.
There we go.
That's correct.
What? Because he's brown? It's
Yes.
Haddari?
Exactly.
Yeah, you're
It
probably
just
right.
he's the way he said it. It just sounded.
It did sound
great.
correct. It sounded a lot better
Sounded
than
whatever the hell you said.
whatever I was
Mustafa
butchering.
Haddadi.
My apologies, sir. I'm not good with the pronunciations. He won the 5K 6 max, which unfortunately Lewis Spencer could not participate in due to his involvement in the 250K. His short-lived involvement in the 250K. Very unlucky, Lewis. R.I.P. But congratulations, he wins his first bracelet and 656,000. He's from Australia. Oh, good day, mate. All right.
Oh, this next one made my day.
Oh no, I
Made
thought
my
it was
whole
gonna be one
summer,
I
actually.
couldn't pronounce. Santosh.
Santosh Suverna. I think June 23rd should be Santosh Day.
Wait,
I agree.
Your best friend's
Yeah.
back there.
Airball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's half the man he used to be. Literally.
And that rail is really
He's-
happy for him.
That rail is one nice 8-handed fucking poker game. I'll tell you that right fucking now. That rail is juicy.
Try to
my
get a seat in
friend.
that game.
Yeah. Yeah. The right people are showing up to celebrate Santa. You know Jason Kuhn, he's like sliding his way over there a little bit like, yeah. Like I was here for B-Tech, but I'm sticking around for this 9-handed game you guys are about to pop off.
Yep.
I'm really happy to see Santosh win.
Yeah,
Obviously, I don't
It's a second bracelet.
Yeah, the first one though, it's like a European high roller. You know,
Listen, man.
he won the 250K.
This is the one.
This is the one that got Chris Brewer off the snide.
Were there any good players in that field?
Nah. Did you see the final table?
Man, he came back from a fucking huge
He
deficit.
ran fucking hot heads up.
I didn't see the heads up match.
He managed to not go broke versus aces with the nut flush draw in a 3-bet pot. B-Tech, I don't want to say B-Tech lit him off the hook, but B-Tech jammed turn for pot.
Yeah.
Where Santosh had ace 7 of spades and he made a really good
I
fold.
think you have to run pretty hard to beat P-Tech heads up, right?
Yeah, he's a beast. He's a beast. Online killer. Those of you guys who don't know, Ben Tollerine.
There was a point where Ben had 80 million in chips. There was like 4 left, I think, and nobody had more than 13.
Yeah, it was like
It's something
60% of
absurd.
the chips in play. That happens though. You just don't expect it to happen in like these massive high rollers.
Yeah.
Especially with like the structure not being super slow. But honestly, like I didn't want to see anybody else win just because nobody can actually show joy the way Santosh does. This man is just like, he must just wake up and just like give himself a mantra every single day of like, no one's luckier in life than me, and I'm going to appreciate every single second that I get to spend being Santosh.
Gotta have a
He's
positive
easy
attitude.
to root for.
So
He really
easy
is.
to root for.
He just seems like such a nice guy.
Honestly, just like the most
that
lovable
smile.
player I've ever played with. He gambles. He doesn't care if he wins. I mean, he cares if he wins or loses, but like you wouldn't know it.
Yeah.
But he was so elated to win this one, as I imagine Brewer was last year, but for way different reasons.
Yeah.
You know, real monkey off the back. Last thing to discuss is yesterday the 50K Players Championship kicked off. Not a lot of buzz around this one this year, and this has always been one of the marquee events. I think it's a little bit unfortunate that the super high rollers for the no limit side have kind of overshadowed a bit of this PPC that has always been, not always, but like for the last 10, 15 years has been a staple of the WSOP. This is the one that people truly wanted to get out and win. It was kind of reflective of like the best overall player.
Right.
And I don't know, maybe
I still think it has that allure.
it does. And I think by the time we get to the final table, we'll all be glued to it. But maybe a little breathing room between the 250K and this would be nice from a scheduling perspective.
Yeah.
I'm sure they want the overlap because there's spillover
People are
from the
already
buy-in
there.
level.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it got 75 runners yesterday. Looks like 17 were eliminated, including one Scott Seaver.
How long can
unfortunately.
you still late reg into day 2?
Yeah. I'm not sure.
You're heading down after this? Or?
Yeah. I'm gonna.
I once had a ticket for this.
I remember Dan O'Brien fired this one.
He did.
It was wild.
He
He
did
literally fired it because he felt confident in his Raz game, and the no limit antes were double what they are in a normal tournament. He's like, I'm gonna fuck these guys up in no limit.
I was this close to playing it. Like, seriously.
You're an idiot.
I had a ticket. I literally gave him the money. I had my printout.
You gave them $50,000.
Yeah.
Why?
Because I was getting change. And she thought I was max late regging the PPC.
Change for what?
Huh?
Change from what?
I had chips from whatever.
It was when he had
the Yarcast,
The 5K.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I was changing out 50K.
That's right.
And to this day, I see this lady all the time. And I was changing out 50K, and I was like, I have change for this. And she late registers me into the PPC. And I sat there and looked at my ticket.
You took a picture of it and tweeted
I
it.
thought
didn't you?
about it. I thought about it again. I was like, this shit would have been epic.
If he would have
And I
played,
was like, you know what? Here. I'm going to be good.
At least you took a picture and made everyone think you were playing it for a second.
That was-
it was just
that
like
was
we're
fun.
losing our
It
minds.
was a good
like,
thought.
it's the
everybody
slowest,
believed it.
toughest tournament in the
Right.
world.
Yeah, it's popping. Let's get it popping.
Yeah, let's get it
I
popping.
got a couple days.
You have one thing that you missed in your updates.
What did I? Oh, we're gonna get to that.
No, it's Ladies Week,
Oh, at the WSOP or in general?
just in general.
Okay, so explain that a little bit because I'm not sure I follow the whole
Okay,
way.
so the Ladies 1K is on Friday. And so
Okay.
traditionally, every year, there's a whole host of ladies tournaments that take place all around town. And so it's not just one venue.
So
that
kind of like
offers-
last week with Seniors Week.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if there's other places that
Right.
have different seniors, but so the ladies 1K on Friday is a 1K, but for example, today at the Orleans, I don't know what the buy-in is. I'm assuming it's going to be like a 300 or a 400.
Okay.
And so that's, throughout the rest of the week. And I'll just give a shout out to Maureen B on Twitter. She came out with a really handy website, womenspokercalendar.com. And so it lists all of the events for the week
nice.
and where
that's
they
awesome.
are, and it has all of the information. And so today's events are the Orleans Lady Championship, and Resorts is
So-
having a ladies event as well.
If I'm not mistaken, there was a 240 ladies event yesterday, and a guy played.
Yes,
At MGM, I saw that.
MGM, yeah.
Can't help themselves.
Imagine a 240. Like, what are we doing, bro?
I know.
I mean, you've hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
You know, not just him, but like just in general. Like, if it's for the memes, it's so much worse. At least paying $10K for the memes is
Quite
like
honestly,
you
it
know, a
wasn't
little
for
bit
the
of a
memes.
flex.
It wasn't for the memes. You should have saw his face in the
He's
picture.
grinding,
Yeah, he was grinding.
headphones on.
Yeah, half his he
hoodie
had no
up.
hair back here. He was really like stressed out and grinding for us. He was fucked up. He was all alone. You know, I felt bad, so I was like, whatever.
What are your
I hope
thoughts
you get fucking
on
rocked.
Katie? What are your thoughts on them putting a bounty on his head whenever he enters? Because I think they put a $240.
Yeah,
bounty
that's
on
pretty common. That happens.
I think that's
because-
a horrible idea.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not.
It gives him an advantage, you think?
It gives him an
Yeah.
advantage. People are shooting after him. If he finds out he has a bounty on his head, it's just like, oh yeah, really, guys?
Well, we saw this with Santa Claus.
Yeah.
And you remember this one?
Oh, in Florida.
It was in Florida.
Yeah.
He ended up getting like second or third. Ebony ran deep, and she like put a progressive bounty on him almost. Like every time he got a stage deeper in the event, they
bounty went up?
They were like collecting more money to put on this guy's head, and I think he ended up getting like second or third in the event. He, totally unapologetic about it. It was a big man having a podcast. I'm gonna remember all the black eyes of the poker community for the
Right.
next 10 years. Yeah, I kind of agree with Conrad. I think it like accomplishes maybe the opposite of what the goal is of giving him more attention than maybe you would like. Like it takes away from the event in some regards.
It definitely takes away from the event. I mean, there's only so much that the organizers can do, though, and it depends on which state you're in. So, for example,
Right.
Here the ladies 1K, it's a 10K, but you get a $9,000 discount if you are a woman. Could MGM do the same thing with their 240?
I don't see why not.
Could their 240 be
2,500?
a 2,500? Yes, it could.
Yeah.
Why don't they do it? That's a great question.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it was just like an oversight.
I can tell. No, it's not an oversight,
Okay.
Conrad. I can tell you why they don't do it because they don't want to piss people off.
Yeah.
They don't. The operators have this viewpoint that because the women's events are so infrequent, they're not a very common occurrence. They don't want to make anybody else upset.
Who would they be pissing off in that
The
sense?
man.
The one guy that has to pay $2,500 if he wants to play?
And all the other ones that might want to do the same thing,
Or
but
anybody in
don't
the
have,
future.
like,
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
I don't think that person will ever be pissed off. They'll just walk away to a normal tournament.
I will say that I mean, we can kind of open the can of worms here. I do feel like there's a little bit of a slippery slope with running lady only or women only events, just in the sense of, well, first it opens an entire discussion of what are we using as the barometer, right? Like at what point do you start turning people away? So there's an entire spectrum of gender and how people identify is how they identify, and like, do you really want to put an hourly worker in the position to have to make that call? I would argue no. Like,
Well, I think it just goes by their driver's license, right?
Yeah,
Like
I
the
think you
casino.
take that out of the
No.
equation if they have to look at their driver's
no.
license.
no, there's I can't remember who the example was, but she was an East Coaster and she cannot get her driver's license changed in spite of the fact of being
identifying
trans.
as a woman.
Yeah, so she was shut out of like all WSOP ladies events at the circuit stops, and was it Aubrey?
Oh, Aubrey. Yeah.
I'm not. I don't want to say that for sure because it may not have been Aubrey,
Played
but
with
I
Aubrey a
think it
lot.
was Aubrey.
I think it was Aubrey too.
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure. Either way, it's not that cut and dry, right? It's not that black and white. And then it's like the entire spectrum exists all the way from full transition to a cross-dresser, and it's like, who are we to judge and have to make this? But more importantly, who is somebody making $11 an hour to be put into this position, right? Like, this is a managerial call. I know that there was like a similar kind of discussion when the Lodge ran something like this where Perkins was on Twitter and he was like trying to draw a hard line in the sand of like, you know, making a defining choice of like who qualified for the ladies only event and who didn't. And the only reason I'm saying that it's a slippery slope is because, and I don't want to speak for you, you can maybe talk to this more than me, Katie, but the overall goal is to just create a non-hostile atmosphere for women who are kind of like at the entry point, or conversely, like women who are trying to help grow the game for other women, right? So you're basically trying to create like a community-like atmosphere. Is that fairly accurate statement?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's you know, I mean, if we walk into a poker room, it doesn't take you know, a super sharp person to see that it's mostly male. And I don't think that it is out of line to assume that new female players may not find a sea of male players inviting.
Right, I agree with that.
And so, you know, if we just approach it from that perspective, because I can very, very tangibly remember the very first time I walked into Borgata Poker Room in Atlantic City in 2008. And it was the new poker room, so it wasn't in the basement anymore. You know, it was the new one, so it was the nice one. But, you know, you guys know me. You know, I'm not easily intimidated. Wasn't real comfy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think that's kind of
Jersey. You know?
Well, so are they, to be fair.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's Jersey,
100%. But like, I grew up in this, right?
Yeah.
And you know, especially now, let's say I was, you know, further along in my poker journey and education, in which I was not. I was only, you know, very new. That could have changed things. Absolutely, 100%. And there are many women out there who would just march right into that room and go straight back to the high limits, you know, and just crush, and take all their money, like you know, has happened for many years. But if we're talking about what the overall goal of the game should be, the number one priority should be to grow the game.
Right. Yeah. So I think we're in agreement there. I guess what I'm saying is I think that the problem is that we have a very sloppy solution right now. I think that women-only events, though they are intended to accomplish this goal, and I think that they have the best of everybody's interest in mind, I worry that the seclusion aspect of it is maybe not the best approach. Like, imagine we did this for some other group, right? And I don't really know what like the most extreme counterexample would be. Maybe just like a men's only tournament or something like that. But the point is that like there are always going to be people that feel like they're being told no for something that should just be a free market, right? And I feel like, and again, this is just my opinion. I have no data to back this, and I don't know that there's any truth to it. But I feel like there were less people trying to enter the women's events when there were fewer barriers, right? Like if we look back in the history of the WSOP 1K lady event, I don't know that more men entered before the 10K thing than now, right? Like it's probably
the culture has changed though over the years. I think, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The way people view things, I think is different now than it was maybe 20 years ago.
Yeah, I guess that's, yeah, you're right. I think like back then it was like, well, let them have their thing kind of thing. And now it's like
people are trying to make a point.
Now you're on one side or the other, right? Yeah. Where you're either just like, yeah, I'm very much in support of this. We need to grow the game for women, or you're on the side of like, this is so dumb. I want to be the one who monkey wrenches this whole thing kind of stuff. And everybody seems to have some sort of agenda. And I guess that's where I mean by slippery slope. It feels like it creates an agenda.
But it doesn't, though. And it's not sloppy, though. Because what's sloppy about it, anything that would be sloppy is just the implementation.
Right. We don't have the ability to execute in a very clean and black and white manner.
But we can. It's not impossible.
Well,
and do you feel that like, despite all that, like, it's still a net positive. Like you're gonna
100%.
have,
for sure.
So you're gonna have
100%.
like these outliers and these people doing certain things, and you're gonna have maybe some sort of slippery slopes. But like overall, it's still a net positive for women.
100%. Because where do the majority of these women go? Do you know? So do you know the path? Do you know what like the system that they go through? They don't stay in the ladies' events, you guys.
Sure.
They go into the open fields. That's why ladies' events exist, right? It's
Yeah, you're going to play a ladies event, then you're going to play 5 other events.
Exactly. It's an entryway, and maybe that happens at some point, and maybe it doesn't, and that's okay. But why are you or anyone able to say that their entry point is not okay?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Or slippery, or
what I'm saying is that the exclusionary factor of it, because it can't be actually executed on, I think is dangerous. And I think like the ultimate goal is for it to just be a majority of women, the exact opposite of what they'll find in an open field event, right? So if you show up to 1,000-person tournament and 100 of them are men, that's pretty like 40 of them are men. That's pretty representative of what you're going to find in the inverse in an open field event, right? Like you're going to find 40 women and 960 men. So I feel like that's fine, right? And I guess that's more so what I'm speaking to is not that there's anything broken with how it is, but that just we should never care when these guys play. And I feel like that's where I feel like that's where we kind of take our eye off the ball a little bit. I'm saying like the royal we here, but like I feel like there's some conditioning that takes place where like the idea of name and shame comes to mind because women covet these events so much, and they should, they're meant for them. But when somebody like breaks enemy lines here and a guy shows up, it's just like boo, hiss.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And at the end of the day, we want to all remain respectful, right? Like this is the root. We should all be respectful towards
fuck these guys
humans.
also, but
Right.
But I guess my point is that you're not accomplishing, like you're actually harming more than helping, right? Because like that's what he showed up to get, was booed and hissed. And kind of
like just ignoring him is bad.
Yeah. It's just like, okay, so if 1% of the field is men, who gives a shit? Right? Because at the end of the day, one of the things that we're trying to demonstrate, both through this conversation and these events and everything else, is that it is a level playing field. And if some shit reg wants to show up and play a 240 ladies event, like, whatever, man.
So, I mean, I disagree with that. I don't think whatever. I think it is, if an operator is going to take on is going to shoulder the responsibility of offering a ladies event, I think they should do it intentionally, and they should do it correctly, and I think that they should do it respectfully. And if its intended purpose is to offer an environment for women players, then I think they're obligated to preserve that. Don't offer it if you're not going to enforce it. So it's on the shoulders of the operator, in my opinion, to preserve that environment for the women. Otherwise, don't offer a women's event if you're not intending on holding a women's event.
Man, I respectfully disagree. So because this one guy played this tournament, in my opinion, I don't think it ceases to be a ladies' event. Like, it's still a ladies' event, and this one guy showed up, right?
Sure.
Would it make you feel any different if that gentleman said, hey, I identify as a woman? What I'm saying here is that it's hard to draw a line in the sand. Like, if this man says he identifies as a woman, well, now you have another slippery slope, right? When someone goes to register, if they tend to dress in a certain way and they want to play a ladies' event, like, who is the person in front that says yes or no?
I guess that's the big...
What I'm saying is when you play this huge event and it's 95, 96, 98% female, and you have these 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 men that are playing, I don't think it ceases to be a ladies' event. And I still think it's a great gateway to women to get into.
Yeah, Guapo is kind of echoing my sentiment, and that was kind of the issue I wanted to bring up, is that there's a huge difference between debating gender and sex, right? So like, what's the general consensus on running these events? Is it to have a sex exclusive event, or is it a gender exclusive event? Because the former is like really fucking hard to just not leave open, right? The latter is biological, but now you're shutting out a lot of your customers that you want to have included. And I suppose I just kind of like want to echo what Guapo says. Like, I still think it's a huge win, and the operators are so fucking handcuffed with what they can do. But maybe maybe that's not the case. I just don't know how in today's.
I don't think they're handcuffed, though. I mean, I just don't. I think it has to do with a lot of things. It's number one, like I said earlier, it has to do with what they're legally allowed to do, right? Like this issue shouldn't really even be as a player, it's a corporate decision how they're going to decide.
Yeah.
So this really isn't in the hands of the player saying, well, you should be allowed to play and you shouldn't. You know, if Guapo, like, of course, if there's somebody who identifies as a woman, you know, I'm all for that. You know, who am I to say that that's, you know, not right or,
but
or wrong?
He's
but I don't
demonstrating
have the
how you
power.
can game the system.
No, I
like
understand.
nobody should pay $10K basically.
But I think that those are going to be very small instances for people who are trying to game the system. I think the overarching, larger, important concept is that the operators do have the ability to foster a culture and a climate that is appreciative of the women's events. And like you mentioned, Brian, over the last several years, you know, things have changed. Sentiment has changed. You know, there's people are thinking a little bit deeper, people are being a little bit more empathetic. People are seeing both sides a little bit better, I think. I could be wrong. I don't know.
It's hard to say.
You know, like there's more, at least we can say for certain there's more awareness, right? Like we're louder, we're talking, you guys are talking, which is the goal, right? It's not just for the women to be talking about it, it's for the men to be talking about it as well. And Guapo, I agree with what you're saying for sure, but you know, that decision's not mine. That's in the hands of the operator. And I disagree because I do think that there are ways that they can, you know.
Yeah, and I think too. Maybe.
What do you think they are?
What would you suggest they do? For instance, if that gentleman goes up to the cage and says, "Hey, well, you know, I'd like to play, but I identify as a woman."
Sure.
So, what are they going to do? Like, what do they say? How do they handle that?
I mean, I think it's just whatever the corporate policy is of that casino. I mean, there has to be consistency. How do they identify their their employees? Like, how do they handle that? It's just, is it a legal identification document? Is it, you know, I mean,
but as we stated before, I mean, there's loopholes to that too. Like, there's going to be,
well, it's not loopholes.
The person that you talked about who can't change their license.
It's not loopholes. It's you deny access.
Correct.
To people from the community that you do not want to deny access.
Listen,
What
guys.
I'm saying is you're going to have outliers to every event, right? Like,
Sure.
What I'm saying is it doesn't take away from the event. It is still a ladies' event.
So it does.
If there's a handful of guys playing, like, whatever, there's a handful
That's
of guys
what I was
playing.
saying.
I
It's
just
more of
don't
a
think so
social
much
construct.
time and energy should be spent on these
But to
few
kind of
guys that are
disagree
playing.
with that, I think maybe it's like you're like, who cares? You know what? It's 1%, and then next year it's 3%, and then the next year it's 10%, and next year it's 25%. So,
Yeah.
and then you don't have a ladies' event anymore.
That's
right?
fair.
Like, so like that, like
It's
that,
not
that
about
could-
being. It's not about
right.
saying who cares. It's about understanding that at the end of the day, these events are like manufactured and designed to be like a social construct. And
But you make that seem like that's a bad thing.
no,
manufactured. Okay, it's
not
not.
at all.
Okay, good.
It's
good.
absolutely a good thing. We have
Good.
infinite social constructs in our society that are beneficial, and all of them are breached by somebody who doesn't believe in the social construct. And I guess that's ultimately what I'm speaking to, is that I don't think that being more heavy-handed with rules and regulation and things of that nature in order to create the exclusivity that we're seeking is the right path. I think just doubling and tripling down on the social construct that exists and knowing that there will always be some outliers that will try to poke holes in it because they don't conform. I think that that's just an okay thing. And this is a weird tangent that we fell down into because this is obviously not what we
Not the
intended to
main
talk about
topic.
today. But I do think it's an important one. And it's one we've talked about in the past without a qualified voice here to kind of speak to the side of these events. Because I think like the notion of like it being a full blown week where across town you can casino hop if you're looking to play these specialized events. I think that's a great thing. Like basically I really think the system in place is doing a great job of cultivating an environment that is welcoming, friendly, and most importantly available. Right? Like in the past, it was you got to play 1 or 2 events. The availability of it all is what I think is most important. And truly, I think what the operators could do that would best benefit everyone involved is run a simultaneous event that's comparable, an open event that's comparable, right?
Like what?
Where if you just offer choice to the people that would want to be the asshole, they're generally going to choose the thing that is best to their bottom line, right? So if you're running a 240 ladies event and you run a $400 open event that's going to get 5x the field size, most people are probably going to choose the latter, right? And sure, you might lose some of the women to that, but that's okay because they're going to be the more seasoned ones
But doesn't
anyway.
that always happen in general, typically, just organically, like because there's so many tournaments
There's
going
more
on?
tournaments
I
going
think
somewhere
separate.
else.
I mean, I myself have been in this quandary. I can't tell you how many times. It's like I want to
Yeah.
support the ladies. I want to play the ladies, but I want to go play the $600, $600, $250K or whatever.
I think in
you know.
general, over multiple properties, yes, but I don't think you see the same property competing with its own price points.
Intentionally, you're
Yes.
saying. So,
I think-
so you're
right.
saying run something on the same day, same time, alongside to
Yes.
kind of counter. Okay, no, that's a valid. And I can bring that up on Sunday at the TDA Summit.
Guys,
It's a
I have
valid-
I have a serious question.
Oh, I thought it was going to be a CSA.
No.
God.
Do you guys think I can identify as a super senior for today? Because there's a 60 pluser down there at WSOP 1K, and like
You don't have enough gray in that beard. Me,
No.
me, maybe.
Nah, all right.
I think you're gonna have trouble even when you're of legal age qualifying.
That's true.
Looking. I think they're gonna still.
Right.
That shit don't crack. Just to button this up and we can move on though. But that's a great example of how an exclusionary event can run
Yeah,
because
it's age.
it's age, right? So that's why I brought up the question of like, are we discussing gender or sex? Because it's very different. And if you go by the license, then you're strictly talking biological sex. And that's going to be exclusionary to people that you truly do want to include.
Yeah.
So I always worry about, when I said slippery slope going all the way back to the beginning, I always worry about losing the people that you're trying to cater to in order or in exchange for shutting out a couple people that are trying to be assholes. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, I think all of us would agree being more inclusionary, regardless of what the environment is generally going to be better for everybody.
100%.
Even though there's always going to be a Sean Deeb in the world, which is ironic because we all love Sean to some degree. But
Was he playing it just to be an asshole? Or was he playing because he was player of the year race?
I don't
Long
think.
time ago.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
a joke, I think.
Yeah, I don't even
Yeah.
think it's part of POY. I could be wrong.
It's not. I don't.
What?
Yeah, well, you can't. It has to be an
'cause
open
that's the
event.
open
Yeah.
event.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so let's this is actually a nice dovetail into things. So Lindsay is rad. Huge congratulations to her. She won the Golden Nugget. Is it the main event?
I think it was the
I
main.
think it was
Yeah.
the main event. It had to be the main event. It's a 6-figure prize pool. Why are you
There's a
laughing?
lot that. Listen,
Go
the
on,
Nugget-
go on.
I don't know why he's laughing.
All right, fine. Jamin had an idea. He had an idea where a bounty tourney idea where each person's bounty was based on the rarity of their race. An Eskimo would be worth more than an African American, which is worth more than a white person. It didn't take off. I'm dead right now.
Oh, gee.
You have to show your 23andMe in order to get in. It's like a progressive bounty. Like my 23andMe has 87 lineages, so my bounty's only $1.
This is so good.
So Lindsay is rad won the Golden Nugget main event for $153,000, and
Let's go, Lindsay.
Yeah.
huge win there. Obviously, maybe the biggest tournament in Golden Nugget history since they had. I don't even know.
They run this every year, man.
Yeah,
every
I'm
year
sure
they
they
have
do.
they have a six. They have multiple six.
You know what's great about the Golden Nugget? She can take every one of those dollars, put it on a 1-2 table, and never actually have a chip in front of her.
That's true. All cash.
Cash plays, baby. So congrats to her. Why this is a nice dovetail is because she put out a tweet. Was this last week when
It
the
was last
15-way
week.
chop happened?
Yeah, I think it was last week.
And that was a ladies event also, I believe. So there was a ladies event at the Wynn. It ended up getting chopped 15 ways. She put out a bit of a controversial tweet, something to the effect of, I wish I had it in front of me. That would help, actually.
It was.
Why don't I
Yeah.
just do
It was
that?
just. She just kind of quoted. Ladies in poker, women in poker, wanting to be taken seriously, and then
Oh, yeah, she-
also.
She did the meme.
Also, women in poker.
Women in
Yeah,
poker.
respect us. Yeah,
Also women in
respect
poker.
them, Yeah.
Chop 15 ways. Yeah, so I think that even though she caught a lot of flack for that, and I know that she kind of put out another message afterwards where she said, obviously this is controversial and I don't desire to argue. I want more trans women in poker, but this is a mental sport. Not everyone can win and be happy. We can all meet up and play Wolf, play board games, etc., and enjoy each other, not chop a tournament 15 ways. So even though she caught a lot of flack for this, I think that this is a really important, I guess, like take on what happened, specifically coming from a woman. Because it really, in my mind, pokes a lot of holes in the BenCB argument. Like, this is just, this is what a competitor, this is how a competitor views the sport, right? That's a knee-jerk response to, what are you girls doing? This is a competition and you're refusing to compete kind of thing. And nobody's right or wrong on this. Like, I think a lot of people had great takes on this whole thing that happened. Jen Shahade had a take where she was like, look how happy everybody is in that picture. These events are different. They're very social. I know like Kerstetter always brings like candy for everybody at the table. It's almost like a meet and greet where you're competing alongside of it. But also along the same lines, you can understand and respect Lindsay's opinion of like, yeah, sure, but we're here to compete. Mm-hmm. There needs to be a winner. That's the way these things play out.
I can promise you there's been a lot of other tournaments where it's mostly men and they chop it 15, 19,
I can promise
20
you that
ways.
they haven't played down to a winner at the Jewel in
I was
years.
gonna say the Jewel free roll, you almost always is like a 2-table chop.
Right. And that was another point. I think Rabinowitz replied to her in thread somewhere, and he said, at what point would you have accepted it being a reasonable chop? 3, 2, 4, 5. It's arbitrary kind of thing.
But this isn't exclusive to just women.
Yeah, and
right?
there's no set number too, right? Like there's no like, oh, if we get to 3 or 4, because there's so many other variables. Like how much is first,
the money
how much is second, how many chips does this person have?
Exactly.
When is the level change? When are blinds going up? Like the question that Darren asked her is not a real question.
Well, right, but he was just pointing out the hypocrisy of it all. Of like, okay, well, you don't accept a 15-person chop, but would you accept the 3-person one?
Right.
Kind of thing. And I think all of these points are really valid because at the end of the day, the entire reason that this even caught any wind is because it was a ladies' event and the optics. Right? It allows you to shoehorn a narrative onto a specific group, right? If this was a mixed crowd, then we'd just be like, LOL, small buy-in people.
And remember that happened? It happened. This was like this year, I think it was. Was it MGM or Mandalay Bay? One of them had like a free roll, or they had some sort of tournament where it was like a huge chop.
Oh, it was like 33 people.
It was
or something like
crazy.
We covered it.
Yeah. And we kind of like,
and we memed on it.
We joked about it. And we moved on. But like nobody said anything. But now when the women do it, now all of a sudden it's they're not competitive, and
it's the optics of it,
right?
It furthers that long-standing trope that women are not competitive. They don't have a competitive bone in their body. They want to conform, and I thought that it's ironic that all of this happened prior to the BenCB stuff because I thought my plans today were to talk about Jen's tweet thread, which she put out like a day before the BenCB stuff came out, because I thought she had a really great take on this.
Well, let me just back up for a second.
So
let me just say a few words about this chop. So I understand what Lindsay is saying. I think everybody understands what Lindsay is saying. We've all been there, and at the root, we know that Lindsay loves women's poker. We know that she wants to support women's poker. I think nobody can argue that just based on her Twitter feed. She's very much an enthusiast in supporting women in the game and the game in general. And so that's where I believe this comes from. And Lindsay and I have plans to talk later this week. We were texting a bit, back and forth just to try to get together. But, she wants women to win. She wants women to succeed. She knows where the effort is. She wants them to be taken seriously. She wants the best for everybody. So, she's saying, hey, like, stop, this is not, and we get it. But here's the thing. There's a whole cycle that everybody has to go through as a player, right? And whether or not they're a professional or a recreational player or an occasional player or whatever, at the end of the day, we have to understand that poker is a social game. Yeah. Like it's not.
This is a great point.
A solitary endeavor.
Right.
Like you're around a lot of people. And my comment to the tweet was just one very simple line, that everybody's experience is unique. And whatever they want their experience to be at the table is fine. And it's not for me to say that. Now, hold on. Let's go back to 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. You remember this, I might have had that mindset, maybe a little bit in the back, not 100%, but maybe a little bit like, I don't want to see that because I don't want the optics of it to reflect poorly on the women. But I'm older now. I have different perspective, and I understand that I have to respect every woman's desire for their own poker experience. And I think a lot of people brought up a lot of very, valid reasons. A lot of them, maybe they're tired, you guys.
Well, they chopped at 8 p.m.
Okay, that could be. I mean, when the WSOP start times got pushed up to 10 a.m., I was cheering. I was like, yes, because I'm a mom. Yeah. I wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning, whether I like it or not. You guys, let's get the day started.
Yeah. So I think there's a real conversation to have here, and we kind of had it without you last week. So I spoke on your.
How dare you?
Well, to be fair, we were talking, so I felt like I could speak on your behalf.
Yeah,
but I'm happy to have you kind of present your own side. So I have no problems with the chop at all. Zero. I think it's completely reasonable. My first big tournament score, I chopped 6 ways. Didn't even hesitate. It was just a thing to do because the difference between having 3K and 23K was massive to me at the time. I don't even need to justify it. I don't give a shit what people do in poker tournaments. You can chop 30 ways. You can chop heads up. I don't care. Where I disagree with what you're saying, it's not even that I staunchly disagree. It's more of there's a lack of context in your point that you just make. So I do agree with you. Everybody's experience is different, and they're free to have their own. Everyone's playing for different reasons. Whatever they want to take away from the game, they're welcome to. And some of that, yes, is indeed social. But I staunchly disagree that that's the driving force behind poker. Poker is a game of gambling. And I think that the more we try to change that narrative, the more we try to remove those optics, the more we try to turn it into chess, which it's just simply not, the more we lose the actual mark of how we can start to solve some of these problems at their core. The issue with presenting poker as a social mind sport where there is no variance, there is no gamble, there's no losses, and all these things that actually are there and cannot be ignored, is that you land in a space where you have this large collection of people who fit or check the boxes, so to speak, of what BenCB is projecting outward, which is a lot of social norms that are projected onto women to begin with that become barriers of entry. And the problem is that the more we prop it up as that's okay that they exist, the harder it's going to be for them to succeed moving forward. So it is important to understand that the game is a competition. It is important to understand that the driving force behind it is to make money, not because we care about dollars or that's what defines us as human beings, but because that's literally how we keep score in this game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's important, but not everybody cares about that. Hold on.
Fine.
I know so many people who, and as I've been preparing for the summit this weekend, I've been talking to a very wide variety of poker players, people who play once a year, people who play every day. Okay. There are a very, very, very large quantity of people. And I would say the majority of the occasional poker players whom I'm speaking to, they win or lose.
Right, but
they don't care.
Totally understand that.
It's about the experience.
We're not talking about them, though, right? Because when you're promoting the growth of poker for females or for women in this game,
but we're promoting the growth of poker for everybody. Because by promoting it for women, you are inherently promoting it for everyone.
Sure. But the focus is not on. I mean, yes, the focus is on bringing them into the entry point, right? But the bigger picture goal is to see equality through the steps. You want to see proper representation as you climb, right? If there are 1,000 elite players in the world, and we can only name 1 or 2 women, that's not proper representation of the amount of women that are participating, right?
Sure.
Well, that the byproduct of that is taking your eye off the ball beyond the entry point. It's like, yeah, we want to corral as many human beings as we possibly can into the interest of poker. But once they get in there, it's really critical to explain to them the constructs of the game, the rules, how it works, how we keep score, and what will allow them to further their path should they choose to take it. But I feel like we take that choice away from them because we want to just condition everybody who's introduced to this game to be a lifelong recreational.
I don't think that's true. I don't see it like that. I think that the most important, function that we can serve is, or the most important, thing we can do is just to ensure that the game is open for all, regardless.
I think wouldn't it happen?
And then
At the buy-in point, though, it is.
At some point, all of that stuff you're talking about happens on its own.
That's what I was going to say. It happens naturally, right?
I mean, look, I think Christy Arnett had a wonderful, post about this morning where, it's just not everyone is going to want to reach the top. Not everybody's going to want to be a superstar.
I think when we first started playing poker, right, there were so many people, like poker was so popular, and we all started playing. There was a bunch of us going back to high school, going back to college, and, people got into it mainly for like the social reasons. They wanted to it was fun. You have poker night, you have this. And some of us went on to become professionals. Some went on to become elite professionals. And some just went out of the game altogether. And some decided to play recreationally. And I think the more that's why having the barrier of entry lowered and having people, as many women at that starting point as you can.
Let's be abundantly clear.
You need the numbers.
Let's be abundantly clear.
You need the numbers. If you gave 1,000, and if there's only 40 women or whatever, how do you equalize that? We got to make the entry point wider.
It's not the entry point where people are falling off. The barrier of entry is near zero. It's just physical dollars.
But it's
right?
not. But it's
Listen,
not near zero.
Let me frame it, and you can poke holes in as you wish. The barrier of entry, in my opinion, is incredibly low, right? Like anybody can walk into a casino, anybody can buy in, anybody can do these things. Now, is there an intimidation factor to it? Sure. But this is very much similar to like going to the gym or getting in shape. There's something intimidating about walking into a new foreign space.
That's one of many. You're just saying like, okay, here's one particular barrier of entry when there are many other barriers of entries that happen before they even get to the door.
Let me finish.
Okay, all right.
The barrier of entry to becoming a recreational is very low. The barrier of entry to becoming competitive is very high. And the thing that keeps people retained in your system is a desire to be there. The desire to be there is generally going to be predicated upon being able to compete or win. People aren't going to come in, get their brains bashed in, and then want to continue to do it. Particularly women who are probably taking on more risk than men whenever it comes to even entering this sphere, right? The notion societally of gambling is way more faux pas for women than it is for men. So you're already kind of like bucking a trend by even taking an interest in something like this. Once you're in that loop, the reason why I'm putting such a huge emphasis on not focusing on giving them the best social experience and all those things are very important. Don't get me wrong. My point is that when you strip it away, the numbers deteriorate way, way, way more past the entry point. The entry point is actually like probably going to be a fair representation of what the community looks like as a whole. But as you escalate, it's no longer equitable.
But it's
right?
not though, because the entry point as of today, if you're saying that, it would be 50-50, but it's not. We don't have...
Well, no, that's not true. There isn't a 50-50 interest in this. Like, if you look at people who play with Barbie dolls, it's not 50-50 between men and women, right? It's going to be representative of people who are interested in Barbie dolls. And same with poker. Poker is, baseball, poker, like there are things that are masculine. There are things that are feminine in this world that aren't going to be a perfect 50-50 split, right? We just hope to get the numbers up a little bit more that make it a little bit more comparable. But what I'm really trying to speak to here is that the largest barriers of entry that women suffer from in this particular space is being helped along the way. So it's money, it's access to content, access to strategies, access to think groups, it's access to games, as I kind of mentioned, access to economics and money and things like that. And then there's also so much that's stigmatized on top of that, right? The barriers that women have to go through to access any of those resources that I just spoke to are going to be different or more complicated than their male counterparts. And this makes the entire process a lot more rigid and a lot more complicated. So sure, we can always do better at the entry point. We can always make this game more attractive to recreationals, to minorities, to women. I mean, there are a plethora of groups that are going underserved at the entry point, right? My bigger concern is that even once we get them in the door, we don't have anything in place to allow them to grow and flourish within this space.
Oh, goodness.
And I'm not saying nothing. I'm just saying we're not doing a good enough job.
So you kind of left off one really, really big barrier, which is kind of an important one. That's kids.
Sure.
Children.
Sure. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean.
But that's why it's going to be more appealing to men to begin with.
Right, but just understanding there's a time commitment with women and being pregnant and childbirth.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I took off when I was at like 7 months pregnant in July, and I said that's it, I'm done. And then I didn't start I took 2 years off.
Yeah.
Good year and a half, and so I was out of the game for 2 years, which is just a biological. Gonna happen.
Yeah.
Women are gonna have babies.
Speaking about that, Nadya just put out a pretty decent tweet, I believe. She's like, my take on Ben's view. Men and women are intellectually equal. I've seen smart men, seen smart women. Dumb men, dumb women. Aggression and competitiveness, women have less of both. Predetermined by testosterone. More men commit crimes because they're more confrontational. Poker favors aggression. None of my poker girlfriends want to compete in anything. Zero interest. Risk aversion, just as most women aren't seeking for conflict, they aren't looking to take risk. I had to work a lot on that part of my game myself and still do. Emotions. Men are less emotional due to hormonal stability. Women have to go through hormonal imbalances often through their life. Men only do once during puberty. However, women have better intuition, but it doesn't make up for being less aggressive, more emotional, risk adverse. With that being said, women can be successful in poker, but a woman will have to work harder to overcome natural and environmental obstacles. Intellectual women are not inferior to men and can succeed with enough determination. Opinion based on 16 years in poker.
All respect to Nadya. I a huge amount of respect for her and what she's accomplished in her life. I don't know her personally. I can disagree with a lot with what she said, and I can agree with a lot of what she said. Look, I'm not a scientist. I'm not an author. There's a lot of studies out there that can counter a lot of what she said, right?
Okay.
But she is correct in that there are substantial environmental obstacles that we are talking about. If we want to go over to the natural obstacles, I think Victoria had an interesting tweet yesterday, which I agree with, which I've said many times, and I don't want to, really get into it. But if you do think of what the makeup of the perfect poker player is, I actually happen to think it is a woman.
Maybe.
I think that the fact that, like Nadya is pointing out, there are hormonal differences possibly. Again, I'm not a doctor. I don't like speaking about this. However, if aggression and ego are very powerful forces, and we know that both of those are necessary for poker, I happen to think that aggression is a little bit of an easier learn and refinement over ego. I could be very incorrect, and I think that that's maybe where the
I think we're very much spinning our wheels. I appreciate Nadya's post, and I think that in her anecdotal experience, all of that is very much probably true. I have a very different experience. I grew up with athletes my whole life. I hung around. I dated athletes exclusively in college. Like, women are just as competitive and cutthroat as men in any arena if they have the interest and passion for it.
Sure.
So,
and that comes from upbringing, right? Too, like a lot of that comes from conditioning. Did they have a dad?
They had hardo dads. They grew
or
up
a mom
doing whatever. Yeah,
who,
of course.
Like in my mom, I grew up as a single mom. Yo, you do not want to mess with my mother. Like, you really, really didn't. I mean, I remember so many times her standing up for me, even with my teachers at school. And so. It could be male or female, but so much of that is just how they were raised and what influences their environment. What were they interested in? Were they, given Barbie dolls to play, or were they given toy cars and dump trucks and Transformers?
The thing is, though, like, I don't even want to put too much emphasis on that. Like, at the end of this, the major discussions coming out here.
That can explain so much.
No, of course it can. Obviously, environment matters, but the main conversation coming out of this is that Ben is confusing biological with environmental.
Yes.
In so much of his debate, right? So much of this in his mind is preconditioned based off of biology and DNA, and that's just like simply not the case. And again, like, I'm not an expert in any of this stuff, but I've read enough to know that we're not all that biologically different. Sure, the hormonal changes and the way our brains operate may have some subtle different incentives based off of years and years of just natural evolution. But we're talking about a game rooted in logic and rooted in risk. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, like, if you are of a certain intellect, you're going to be capable of doing the things necessary to win at this game. Like, that should just be a hard stop.
Agree.
Foundational point.
Totally.
Everything thereafter, I think, is people putting a big emphasis on their own anecdotal experiences, right? They want to change this, that, or the other about the environment because the environment conditioned them this way, that way, or the other way, right? And the fact of the matter is, the game is the game. The interest is the interest. The best thing that we can do as a community is figure out ways to be more inclusive in every single step along the way. The entry levels, the mediator levels, the elite levels, finding ways to be inclusive and not doing it in a forced manner, right? Like, look, there isn't a single woman that owns a training site. I guess, like, you could say Poker Power.
Victoria.
Right.
Yep.
Well, it's not a training site yet. I guess Octopi is a training site. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm thinking more traditionally, but yeah, you're right. It's positioning that way, right? And it's new. But prior to that, it was or Poker Power, rather, was like really the first coordinated female-led type of path. And the thing is, like, even all of this is my fear is that it becomes insulated, right? So, like, with Victoria's, I like that she's a female face of just an open-sourced training site, and we'll see how this flourishes and what different roadmaps it takes and everything else along those lines. The reason why I brought that up, though, is because industry standard throughout the years was that the people who created training were people who were already proven successes in this space. And the issue is, as I kind of mentioned, is we're not at a point yet where we've created an easy path for women to follow that, and then the ones that do lose interest for one reason or another. Either they don't want to be the martyr that's representing women everywhere, and you can't blame them, or they move on in their career, in their life. You see, like, Vanessa is a great example. She moved on to a much bigger, badder career. She's a mother now. She's married and just couldn't be further removed from poker. And, like, that stuff's going to happen. So you're going to lose some of the best talent along the way. I think a much better arena to actually look at and try to figure out the problem at its root and then start solving from there is chess. Because, and honestly, this to me is what clearly takes away any point that Ben was trying to make. and personally, like, I just have a real issue with Ben's message because it comes off as bro science or like, you know, he's like one of the, and like, look, as somebody who fits the mold of somebody in that camp, like, this is the dumbest take, you know. It's such a sophomoric take of like being 13 and just seeing the world through a competitive lens and looking at everybody around you as you're inferior in some sort of way. Like, well, you're inferior because you're female. You're inferior because you're not as tall as me. You're inferior because you're not as fast as me. Like, that's the way we measured the world as young boys that are trying to figure out where we fit in the hierarchy of all things. And that's the way this reads to me. It reads as an Andrew Tate sentiment, right?
That's the first thing I said.
Right. So it just rubs me the wrong way because, like, I very much come from a driven background, a belief in like hard work pays off, a belief in dedication and determination and all these things to overcome your shortcomings. But in no way, shape, or form do I think they're unique to me or unique to men in general. Right. So what I think chess clearly demonstrates, like, it pokes a hole in all of his points in the sense that there's no risk. There's literally no fucking risk. So why don't we see a larger, more equitable distribution of women at the top of chess, right?
Is that your question? Do you
that's like what I'm leaning into.
Do you legitimately have that question?
No.
Oh,
I know the answer.
You know the answer. Okay.
Yeah,
okay, great. Because that would be a whole nother show.
But I'm posing it that way because, or I'm framing the question that way because the answer that he seems to give is that women aren't as competitive or they're too risk averse to make it to the top. There's no fucking risk, not within the confines of the game. Right? There's no risk within the confines of the game. You're
talking about chess right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not a battle of ego the way that like poker can distill down to. It's not a battle of. It's not a game of chicken. You know, where it's like I can buy you out of things effectively because you're afraid to invest money in certain spots. It's literally just this beautiful logic game where everybody's operating off of some starting point. We have certain answers, but then there's also just like a lot of going down your own kind of like pathways to figure out ways to outmaneuver people. So to me, like that's the perfect sandbox to figure out how to start to solve problems in poker, because without saying the thing out loud, it's like, well, why aren't there more? Well, like, why isn't it a 50-50 or whatever the general interest between men and women is in chess when it comes to grandmasters? And it's like, go ahead, you can.
Okay, so let me just back up
without turning this into a 2-hour show. Like,
yeah, let me just back up to, you mentioned, people who kind of leave the game, right? Like, and so you said, if we're addressing this at the root issue. So let me ask you a question. Do you think that people are more likely to leave the game if they have less of a community within the game?
Yeah.
Okay. So do we think that if general poker playing population was 50-50, do we think that we would have a better chance of retaining people on the male or the female side? Because let's just talk about females. Do we think we would have a better chance of retaining the females because there's a larger pool of females?
Yeah, obviously. The probability of them finding their own little niche.
Right.
Yeah.
And it will happen, right? Like Vanessa Selps, like she's playing a much bigger game now.
Right.
She's doing other things. And that's going to happen with men too. It
does all the time. We just don't notice it as much because there's somebody to fill the shoes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So if we know at the end of the day that if the general player population more reflected regular population, we would have a better chance of success.
For sure.
People sticking around longer.
Right.
And also, why is that specifically important for women? Well, let's talk about that. You have women who maybe start the game pre-baby, pre-marriage, and then maybe they take a break because they got to have a baby, like me, and they got to nurse for 2 years, like me, But then I have friends who are still in the game, like Jamie Kerstetter and Jennifer Shahadi, because they're still crushing. well, that helps me stay connected. That helps me stay motivated. Like, yeah, I got to get back into it. I can do it. So, you know, when I have, you know, friends right now who are occasional recreational poker players, and then, you know, some of them are getting pregnant, you know, they're starting their families, which is amazing. And they're nervous because they're like, what's going to happen? You know, and I'm like, no, poker is always going to be there. You have an amazing social community of friends that are in the game and are enjoying the game, and they're going to help you stay in it, and they'll help you learn. And so it's just a different path for women, right? Like, but men could have that path too, with family and work obligations and everything. And so it's just, you know, as long as we understand that getting general population a little bit more equal would really just solve so many problems, you guys.
But that's kind of like the question I'm presenting, right? Like, and that's why I bring chess up, because in my opinion, the barrier of entry to get women interested is lower. They don't have to ever worry about financially risking. They don't ever have to worry about the stigma of gambling being pressed upon them. Like chess, there's a certain level of, I don't know, like
there are a lot
pride.
of different issues, though.
Oh, of course.
Yeah,
well, I don't even know if they're different. I think there actually might be a lot of crossover, but I guess video games come to mind for this. So I watched a documentary maybe a year ago or so, and I think people forget that like in the 80s, video games were like 90% sold to boys. It was just a boy activity, right? And the biggest reason behind that was the marketing. So the toy stores, the game developers, all of that, they had decided that this was going to be a product dedicated to boys. And somewhere in like the late 80s, early 90s, there was a bit of a spike in interest from girls. And I can't remember which specific company.
I think it was Mattel and the little girl in the overalls.
Yeah, possibly. But whatever it was, one of the companies like saw this as a huge opportunity, and they, you know, basically went hard into branding for little girls, bringing them into video games. Like things like Strawberry Shortcake
Might have
became
been Lego, actually. I think it was Legos. Yep.
Maybe for toys, but like for video games specifically.
Yep.
So like a bunch of games that like had no interest to boys started to flourish. Like, you know, there was like a Strawberry Shortcake game, like based off of like the cartoons that girls would watch and stuff like that. Now, if you look, gaming is much closer to 50-50. Maybe not at the esports level when you start to get the professional, but when you look at like the consumer level, it's very close to like 50-50. And these companies understand that like having a broader market base is huge. Sure. So obviously for decades, I'm sure chess was pushed as a boy activity and things of that nature. But in today's day and age, I'm a lot more confident that it's much more unisex. I just wonder where the fall off occurs. Like, why is it that we don't see as many top ranked female chess players as we do male? Because in poker, I can point to very clear hurdles outside of the social aspect of it, right? But just the very strict hurdles of economics, of risk, of, you know, these things that ruin men as well. It's just there's so many of us. We don't worry about the people that fell off along the way, right? We only look at the people who made it. What is it about chess specifically, like the construct of the game, the community, and things of that nature that seems to be suppressing women in that space?
Oh boy, that's a real question right now.
I know it's loaded, and we don't need to go super deep into it. I understand all the things that are going on with like the head of the chess order. I just don't understand that world as well as you. Yeah. So I guess the translation is helpful.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, first of all, you're dealing with kids a lot of the time.
Right.
Right. So this is the big difference, right, in poker and in chess. And so for so many individuals who enter the chess world, they come in as children. Mm-hmm. And so there's unfortunately a lot of, opportunity for, bad things to happen. And you have to keep an eye on it in a way that you don't really have to keep an eye on it with adults. Mm-hmm. And so that's, I think, one of the biggest aspects to it. There's, and then everything that comes along with it as far as, male, female harassment. I mean, there's so much that is just very different from poker. You're just in a completely different world, and you know, it's a very dense topic. It's really,
you nailed it. And I wasn't thinking that way, but I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how much of chess starts at an early age, but you're right.
Yeah.
Right? Like when you're dealing with toddlers,
Well,
you know, preteens,
Yeah.
and the like.
Yeah.
It's a way different.
It's a very different situation.
Yeah.
And being that, I mean, it's certainly better now. There's many more women in chess than before, mostly due to Jennifer Shahadi's personal efforts, you know, worldwide efforts, because she is such an international superstar. But there's a long way to go, and it is still pretty male dominated. And at the top of the leaderboard, there's a lot of guys up there, and there's a lot of guys up there that have been in power for a long time. And, you know, it's man, oh man, it is a whole other can of
Katie,
worms.
if I can understand this correctly, you were saying that the difference between the turnout between male and female players in chess was because of harassment. I mean, that's one of the factors,
there's
right?
one, yes. So female players, unfortunately, just like women do in the rest of the world.
Sure.
And
So
because
there's
of the
also
fact
just
that there's
at the youngest age, there's a
lot
much
of
larger power dynamic.
young women, right?
So
of
my
course.
question would be, because there seems to be a correlation between live and also online. 85% of registered chess players who play online are men. 15% are women.
Which is interesting, because isn't it different for poker? Like, it's more women online than
yeah.
poker. You know,
I think the anonymity of being able to delve into these kind of like societally shunned activities, like quietly within your own home, is attractive to not just women, but people in general.
for sure.
What I'm saying is there's still a correlation, right? Like,
Yep.
it's still heavily outnumbered to men. And online, I would think that women don't have to worry about being harassed. So I wonder why
Well,
there's
I
still
mean,
such a
sure,
huge
like,
disparity.
Coming from a parental, you know, perspective, you're always very careful about when you let your kids play online. So do we know how many of those people are kids, minors versus adults?
Also, how accurate is, like,
Yeah.
do you just like click the scroll down button of like male, female? You know what I mean? Because it's very viable the way that men used to pose as women on online poker, that women would pose as men in online chess. For respect factor or just less harassment.
There can still be a lot of harassment online as well.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
if
Right.
less harassment if you present that way. I mean, this happens in gaming all the time. I didn't even realize this until I started scrolling the TikTok streaks, but like a lot of women are posting their experience in gaming, and a lot of them can't even get a game. They'll come into the lobby, and the second that they speak, people will just like flame them. There's this guy who uses a voice modulator, and he speaks as a kid, and then he speaks as a girl, and he's like a boss gamer. And he'll go into the lobby, and like he'll constantly just get like berated and shut out if he's speaking in any of those voices. So like, yeah, there is a lot of prejudice. I mean, this is what happens, right? Like,
Environmental. I mean,
yeah, communities become insulated to what they cultivate.
right.
And a lot of these things are framed as boy activities.
I guess I'm just trying to play devil's advocate here. I'm just saying that there does seem to be a trend when it comes to competitive sports or gaming or whatever it may be, that it seems to be male dominated. And I think there is probably a reason behind that.
Well,
and
yeah,
think
I mean,
that's
we
the
didn't-
direction BenCB was going in.
Yeah, I mean, there is. Like, when did women get the right to vote? You know?
Yeah.
I mean,
50, 60 years ago.
Last week.
A little longer
so
than that, but
I
yeah.
don't know. That might have something to do with it.
Yeah, no,
you
of
know,
course.
like,
I mean, yeah. So the reason why that's not what BenCB meant is because he keeps harping on the biological. So Victoria just posted an update. She said, this debate's not going to happen, at least not with me. I asked Ben to frame the debate question as why men dominate poker elite, and explore the reasons and potential remedies. But he insists on the debate topic being why men have a biological advantage over women.
Oh.
This is not something I'm interested in debating in the slightest, so I'm out.
No,
and
good.
The
Good.
reason why you don't want to debate it is because it's just simply not debatable.
No.
It's a bad faith argument. And that's kind of like what I've been saying about the messaging all along. Like, here's the thing. Everybody's very quick to call somebody an ist, a misogynist, a racist, like all of these things, right? And Ben was clearly triggered whenever that was the framing of questioning Y's opinion. I don't think, I don't like that about 2024, you know, because it does, first of all, it prevents people from saying the stupid thing. And I think saying the stupid thing out loud is often very important for conversation.
Yeah.
There's a small chance he'll learn something from all this, but who knows, right? If nothing else, a lot of us onlookers have opened up the conversation in a way that maybe is a lot more mindful than we would ever have considered otherwise.
Agree.
But second to that is this notion of just completely losing the actual conversation that needs to be had in order to bring out your pitchforks, right? Like, Ben's probably not, I don't know him. He's probably not a bad guy.
Yeah, I was gonna go on the same tangent, but go ahead.
Yeah, he's probably, I'm certain he's intelligent, you know what I mean? So I don't really think like crucifying him over a bad take is the right approach, but it definitely needs to be understood that it's a bad take. So like him getting dunked on for a bad take is very internet-y and very fine. And him doubling and tripling and quadrupling down on something being biological, you know, barring him having some sort of like deep understanding of human biology, DNA, and what is innate to us, which last I checked, I don't think he's an MD of any sort. I doubt that that's the case. I'm going to go ahead and trust a lot of the other sources that are kind of like saying this is no. And so the issue with having a bad take is not the bad take itself. It's when you present it in a bad faith way, right? And that's exactly what he's doing to Victoria here. He says, anybody who wants to debate me on this topic, I want to have that conversation out in the open on a podcast. And I'm sure a lot of people will be like, why didn't you have Ben on here? And it's because he's not coming at it from an angle of actually wanting to have a back and forth. He's coming from an angle of being right and wanting to demonstrate that he's right. And all that makes him is a bad faith actor, right? So he just wants to put a bad faith argument out there, throw a bunch of logical fallacies at you so that you're left scrambling, like swatting them all away of like, oh no, that's not a thing. And you never actually get to discuss any of the real points. I really wanted to come, like, in my opinion, if you're going to platform people, you want to platform people that whether you agree or disagree with them, they're mindful and thoughtful about both sides. And to me, it was very important to get you on because I had kind of been doing that on your behalf for the last couple of weeks. There was a lot of things we agree on, and there are a lot of things that we don't see eye to eye when it comes to solutions specifically. But in no way, shape, or form do I think that we don't respectfully understand the problem at hand. And I think that's what's being lost here in not just Ben's comments, but the fact that there are now 100 people replying very thoughtfully, by the way. Some of these responses, even the ones that are pro Ben, you know, Charlie Carroll's response, that was well thought out. He put a lot of time and effort and energy into that. He wants to give Ben the benefit of the doubt in a lot of different ways. And I'm sure that he sees, as do I, as a competitive male who grew up in a sporting environment, it's like, I fully understand where Ben is developing these thoughts from. They just happen to be thoughts that were a part of 13-year-old me that got more educated as I got older. I didn't fall down the manist rabbit hole of, you know, women belong in the kitchen and men go out and get their hands dirty and, you know, we're the breadwinners and we're the fighters and we're testosterone and we're competitive and they're not capable of all those things, so they have to be soft and loving and warm and comforting. And it's like, yes, maybe collectively on the average, each of those sides represent male traits and female traits. But let's not forget that this is a Venn diagram and the overlap, because we're all fucking human, is vast, right? Like if you look at the Venn diagram of men and women, it's not this tiny little sliver of things that they share in common. It's mostly commonalities and then some outliers that somehow we just keep focusing on. That to me is like where all of this turns into nothing. Because like, you know, Christy Arnett's response was phenomenal. She spent a lot of time on that. It's a great read. Jen Shahade's response, phenomenal. It's
Tom
a great
Martell's
read.
responses were great.
And he was spending time going back and forth in the thread. And don't get me wrong, like, you know, I've debated back and forth with Tom on certain things. Like, he wants to be right as much as the next guy, but he's doing it in a way that is thoughtful and able to be moved if he says something out of pocket, right? He's like people who put the time and energy and effort into being that thoughtful are worth listening to. And again, like I said, Charlie was very pro Ben in this, but again, he's at least being mindful and thoughtful. And if you disagree with him, you could respectfully do so.
I mean, it's kind of funny that somebody called him low IQ. BenCB.
Ben called right.
It's like, what?
That's when you know you're dealing with somebody that has no desire to actually have a conversation. All he's doing is attacking everybody who says anything, saying it's idiotic we're even debating this. Tom's obviously low IQ. Like, come on, man.
Well,
this guy's brilliant.
Look at the fucking response he put. Imagine saying that. Like, just put the response he put together.
I'll bet you $1
Imagine saying
million
that.
on our IQ test. Yeah. I mean, I enjoy that these debates come up. And again, like, my plan today was to talk about Jen's thread, which we barely even scraped.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
And the reason why I really wanted to talk about this is because I thought she said the quiet part out loud. The thing that a lot of men can't say, and what Ben seemed to want to say but didn't frame it very well. I'm always very hesitant to make these points because I don't want to get framed the way BenCB did. But like, she points out real problems that women are going to face in specific communities like poker. Number one being economics. Like, it can't be ignored. You know, I don't feel like I'm saying anything all that hot button here, but like, there aren't that many minorities and there aren't that many women in a game that requires a lot of capital because economically speaking, those groups tend to be more challenged.
Disposable income is what we're talking about, right?
Yeah. So it's just like, of course, there are a lot of young white guys. You know, that's the way the society is currently set up. Is it a problem? Absolutely. Do we have solutions for it? Not immediately. You know, there isn't some scholarship fund to get people gambling. God, I wish there was.
She tweeted, so Jen had a really good tweet. You know, the question was, why are there barely any women in the top 100 poker earners list? And her response was, background, men have more wealth, higher wages, more access to capital, a super large percentage of crypto. They create study groups and cliques with no or few women. Women, on the other hand, have more child care, elder care, emotional labor, and are often harassed and told that they are biologically inferior.
Right. So I think you and I may have talked past each other a little bit, but like, that was the big point that I wanted to hone in on. It's not like, why aren't there more women who are interested in poker in general? It's like, that's its own problem and a marketing one, right? One that we as a community can collectively do a little bit better on. But I think Jen's points are the ones that are most critical because it's difficult to market a game where there's no end point to celebrate, right? When you don't have that shero to point to of like, well, look, she made it to top, the top 10 earners of all time, that type of stuff, then it becomes really difficult at the entry point to just be like, hey, someday you could be mediocre too.
Right, but is that maybe an opportunity to reframe, and I know that you just love hearing me say this.
Just don't say optional.
No.
Is it possibly an opportunity to reframe maybe what we want out of the game, right? Like, we started off this conversation with agreeing that poker is a social game. Mm-hmm. Not saying to de-emphasize any of the competitiveness. I'm just saying that the competitiveness and the niche communities have kind of taken over poker's entire public persona. Does that make sense or no?
It does, but very loosely and only because there's money there. There's content creators, there's media, there's all of these other ancillary aspects that people are getting wrapped up in, but it's because they see a means to an end. If they were all doing it for nothing, you would see it fall by the wayside very, very quickly. And you can tell that by the established content creators who aren't making as much as they would like to or should. They give up after a couple of years. I don't really think we can ever lose sight of the core of what this game is, which is it's gambling until it exists in some sort of league format.
It's not just gambling, though. That's the thing.
Not just.
Like, hold on.
But
hold
it
on,
is.
Hold on. It's gambling 100%. But it's gambling in a way that's different from, let's say, roulette.
Sure. Totally
right?
agree.
So so does it make sense for the marketing for that kind of gamble to mimic the marketing for this kind of gamble? In my mind, okay. In my mind, it doesn't.
Right, but it the current marketing doesn't reflect those two things. Right? Like the point that I'm trying to get at is the reason why it's framed as competition is because that's amplifying the messaging that there's gamble involved, there's risk involved, there's money involved, there's a scoreboard to keep track of. When you try to reframe it as it's a social activity, it's bingo. Nobody goes to bingo expecting to win.
Not bingo. No, but just a little bit away from the niche, meaning
for what it's worth,
meaning just software and RTAing and
Yeah,
cheating is
of course,
in our face
of
because they're
course.
sponsoring everything. Like this is what I'm talking about.
But for what it's worth, I do think the community has at least tried that path, whether it's pandemic or even current state. Some of the most popular people in this space are hardly proven winners.
Totally.
Right?
Love that.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. The problem is there's nobody building off of that. Like if you're a Poker Face Ash follower and she gets your foot in the door and you like the cut of her jib, you like her vlogs, you like everything she shows you the ups and downs. She shows you what to expect as a competitor. She frames it properly. It's social, but it's gambling. It's competitive, but it's fun. All this stuff, right? And she gets you to a point where you're both interested and you are trying, but your results aren't there, whatever the case may be.
That's okay.
Right, but who's now picking up the lead from her, right? Who's now taking those people and ushering them?
Yeah, that's why it's so important to have more people who look like them in the game. That's why it's so important to have more of a 50-50 player pool so that there is a community.
But that's
for them
idealistic.
to fall back on.
Right, but that's idealistic. We can't jump to the how do we make it 96-4, 50-50 or more 50-50.
But what we can do is we cannot poo-poo the people who choose to have a different experience.
Sure.
Right?
But let me ask you
this. We
this.
can embrace that. And
where do you think it would be more beneficial? To have a 50-50 split amongst the top 100 professionals in the world, or to have a 50-50 split amongst the top 100,000 entry-level players?
Well, what do you think?
I don't even think
it's even close.
I know what he
I don't think
thinks.
it's even close.
I can't imagine.
You want to give it to the pool.
No.
I mean,
No.
here's
Wait, say
the
that again.
thing.
Sorry.
Hold on. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just thinking economically and how to grow the game and how people can sustain a living. Like having a bigger pool would be much better.
Yeah, for everybody who's winning.
Okay.
Okay, but that has nothing to do with gender. All that's going to do is promote more men. They're already established men. They're going to feed off the 100,000 that split 50-50. So you're going to promote more men. If you have 100 players that are top in the world and half of them are women, don't you think that that's going to create more of a 50-50 split long term than if we have 100,000
Yeah,
players?
because the top and the heroes, quote unquote, of the game are half women,
Exactly.
half men.
Now the ones
Right?
that make it to the Poker Face Ash level and are still like dissatisfied or whatever and are looking for next steps, they have an entire trajectory above. They have elite all the way down to amateur to look to.
Right, but I don't know if you can.
And to mentor.
But the thing is, can you really get to 50-50 split without having the 50-50 split at the beginning?
Right. Well, who knows?
Right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's obviously
Right. This is why so much.
I don't think you get there without.
That's what I'm
having,
saying. Right, you
Without
ha-
having.
No, but you can
need
move the needle.
numbers.
You can move the needle is much more movable and malleable at the top than it is at the bottom. And I know that sounds weird to say because it implies that it's not that hard then to be at the top. But the reason that's not what I mean at all. A lot of being within that top 100 is not just curating a lot of skill for this craft or whatever. It's longevity, right? So there will always be a handful of outliers like Chrissy B, like Jen Shahade that just last, right? And if anybody actively is trying to promote them and give them the resources available to become a part of the top 100, now that growth can begin to grow, right? But if you focus instead at the entry level and you try to make this more appealing to people that have never once thought about poker before in their life, it becomes a bit of a fool's errand.
I don't think so. I mean, you and I talk about this a lot. This is like a big, big one. And I just don't think so, because I think that, and apologies if I don't explain this well enough. I think that there are so many other positive parts of the gamble and the game that you can emphasize on that can allow people to stick around. And I think that there's a big gap in that right now. I mean, I think, for example, what Poker Power is doing is great because they're bringing awareness to the other qualities about poker that are helpful in other areas of life. It's important to focus on those efforts, not just a social game, not just a gambly game, not just being number one, not just being looking for a split at the top. It's important to focus on what poker gives you. And once general player pool understands that they can possibly get something back, whether it's in winnings or money or brain power or a social community, if we did a better job emphasizing those other benefits, I think that that's an area we can improve.
It has to be both, right? Like you have to have, get as many people in the door.
And that the pros are on board with it. That's the other big thing. Like the elites, like ideally what would be happening right now on Twitter, Nix, and I apologize, Brian, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No,
you've got a very valid point. But ideally, like if the elites were coming down and saying, look, this is not okay, what's happening? Like for our game to grow, we need to all be understanding, like ideally that would happen, right? So that the beliefs would hopefully trickle down. Right. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that I think that you have to have both, right? So you have to get as many people in the door, but then also like what Berkey's saying, have a pathway for them to rise to the top, which when you do see more women rising to the top 100, then that's only is going to generate more women to have interest in the game, and then more are going to go. And
so
it's
how
just
do we
do
that, Brian? How do we
that's the question.
help the ascension to the top?
I don't know.
Do we dedicate more energy and effort towards women's poker and getting them to be successful?
I think that would be a good start.
Sorry, not to poo-poo the celebration here.
Let's go.
We did it. We solved it.
I just really think you're overlooking the most blatant hurdle, which is the money factor.
Of course.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're framing this as male versus female at the entry point and all this other stuff, but the truth of the matter is, if the things that you're speculating on actually worked, then we would just bring in more recreationals, period.
No. Just the effort has not been made.
The effort's certainly made to bring in recreationals. We're talking about people that may or may not have any interest in poker whatsoever. Pulling that group in, whether it's 100% male or 50-50 split down the middle, it's a very inefficient marketing campaign that
Agree.
The game just has to speak for itself at some point, right? We can't keep reaching further and further and further down the funnel.
No, but it's our responsibility to highlight all of these valuable parts.
But I think
of
that
the game
happens.
And where people can fit in. If they don't fit here, they can fit there.
Again,
and then if they don't fit there, they can fit somewhere else.
But you keep reframing it as though it's like a high school where if you're not a part of like this group, then you'll be a part of that group and that type of stuff. No. It's about money. It's about money through and through to the core every single time, because you're risking money. So it's not about.
But not everybody is, though. A lot of these spaces that I'm talking about could be free bar leagues, free social games at Nancy's house on Saturday afternoon.
I think what you're saying, but like the free bar leagues aren't going to lead to
exactly. They're not good lead gens.
How do you know?
Because we've been running them for decades.
I came from the bar leagues.
Yeah.
How do you know?
It's very simple. It's very
One
simple.
out of X.
There's what, 500 million Zynga users?
Yeah.
There's what, 1% of that is competing for real money? I mean, it just doesn't translate, right? Like, we should just be capturing the Zynga pool. Why aren't we? Because it doesn't translate. Money fucking matters a lot. This game does not function well outside of the confines of money. Now, you know, my grand vision for poker as a sport, as an industry, is that somewhere, sometime down the line, it becomes sportified and every major casino owns its own fantasy team, and all of these high rollers that we're seeing are no longer buy-ins put up by the players. They're all on contract.
You know what?
Each casino host is gambling for the prize pool for themselves.
I think you would
You
see
should
a
talk to my
lot.
friend Matty Waxy. He's on something.
Shut up.
I think you would see a lot of more women rise to the ranks.
Of course you would, because now you
Right.
have a curated pool where all you have to
Yeah.
do is get in.
I-
If
with-
Chrissy B gets in,
Right.
and she's a part of 100 players
Right.
that are playing with no risk and all the
She should be
reward,
right at the top. Right.
right?
Yeah.
She's going to be a part of this collective, and now everybody has something to aspire to.
Yeah.
Right. But as it stands, like,
I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
Of course.
So like,
And
I don't-
everybody goes down different paths.
So what would there be solutions where you find somebody that like an economical solution where like now certain women can get backing, or they can get like the burden of the financial.
I think that look, it's very
is
hard.
lifted?
It's very hard because it has to go hand in hand. You have to be able to raise funds and be qualified. And those are the two tricky things. Like, Sheets was just texting me and he said, out of 600,055 applicants, I had 3 women.
Wow.
And I accepted them all. And one stole from me. So just know that they're all capable. Like, it doesn't matter, male or female, everybody's capable of being, 33% is probably about accurate for people who are going to do bad things. But the whole point of that is that the reason why more women didn't reach out isn't because they're not interested in being backed, right? It's because either they lack the general confidence in their ability, they lack the overall skills necessary to take on a backer, or they just lack the ability to even get in touch with somebody like Sheets. And this is 10, 15 years ago when guys like Backs and Sheets were known to run massive stables and easy to reach out to. Now they're these tiny little CFPs, and it's very complex. But the point is that the opportunity here for people who want to create businesses within businesses are to set up shop at that low level, find people that are worth investing in, both time and money resources, and cultivate that way. The reason why it doesn't happen is there's no fucking meat on the bone at those levels. The $11 daily on Stars is barely beatable, let alone by somebody who's playing at that. Pads is fucking playing it.
Yeah, you get an $11 and you have to go against Pads.
Right, so you're playing elite competition whenever you're at the entry level buy-ins. The game is just broken in its incentives. It's a money driven game. The incentives are to play to win. Very similar to fantasy, daily fantasy. It's just broken. The model is fucking broken.
Again, so that's why I repeat, we find these other valuable areas of attraction for the game.
You can find anything. The thing is, you can find anything you want, but if people aren't making money, they can't stay. They go broke.
But it's not about money for everybody.
No,
Not
you're
for
talking about
everybody.
elites. You're talking about a tiny fraction of people who find poker interesting. And yes, point me in the direction of all of them, because I'll take them to a fun game down at the Bellagio where they'll all fit in.
I'm telling
and they'll
you,
have a blast.
These are people who go to the casino with $600 to lose.
And I'm telling you that of the entire population of players out there that fit that description, they're the vast minority. If they weren't, games would be healthier. Cash wouldn't be dying. Bigger buy-ins wouldn't be as tough as they are.
If you look at a casino, there's a lot of women that are playing slots and playing roulette and playing bingo and playing how do we transition them from taking
define a lot though.
I would say
There's 50%.
I would say like the percentage
Right.
of men and women playing
Yes,
on the
yes,
floor
yes.
compared to what it is in poker is vastly different.
Of course, it's
Right.
vastly different.
It's like 50-50 on like slots and stuff like that. I think.
Right, I understand. My point is more so that when you're qualifying as a lot, I meant like qualified dollar amount as a lot, right?
Oh,
the amount invested.
I mean, it's
Because oftentimes what it is just like a couple or whatever, where it's like, here's $10, fuck off.
maybe, but I don't know. I mean,
Nobody's actually, when you're talking about like floor gambling like that, it's again only a small percentage that are actively doing it for extended periods of
yeah,
time.
I don't. I mean, neither one of us probably really actually know the numbers of how much people lose,
Win or lose.
win or
Like,
lose.
yeah.
Sorry, I didn't
on a
mean to.
given
I didn't mean to make it that specific. My point is
Right.
that when you're talking about floor gambling, the turnover is massive.
We
Right?
have
There's a
Jeno.
tiny subsection that like play for rakeback and or edge gamblers or whatever. Right.
Right.
The vast majority.
I'm talking about the recreation.
Right,
Yeah.
but the recreationals, the vast majority of them probably gamble like once or twice a year.
Hey, relax. Optional slot players.
Option.
I mean, look. Okay. Excuse me. Let me just.
I hate that term.
Excuse me. Let me just explain. I am not trying to change the way you term. It was more. It's more of like a theoretical approach, right? Like understanding.
I knew what you were getting at. You were
Where-
trying to get people to reframe the way that they view those
just
people.
to view it, not
Right.
not what's coming out of their mouth,
Right.
dankness. You know,
You got what you deserved.
I mean,
Twitter is not the place
no.
to be putting these
What are we
ideas out
trading
there.
derivatives here?
This is the point. Is I think a lot of what we're stuck in is we think about things in one way, right? Just like you said, the 13-year-old boy.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so it is making the attempt now that some of us have, completed our own one of our cycles. We all have many other cycles of perspective and understanding to go through. But when we do close one of those rings, and then we see things a little bit clearer, and it's understanding that the way we view a particular type of player is really important. We don't have to change the way we talk about them, but we do have to respect where they come from and why they're so important. And that's why I felt that, viewing them as an optional player would just give our brains an easier time to understand that, like, yeah, they could be here one day and then tomorrow they could be gone. What are we going to do about it?
Guys, if we want to promote the game of poker, I think we need to start hitting bingo halls.
Yeah.
70 to 85% are the statistics, male, female.
Yeah.
I'm one of the 30% out there. I love a little bingo night with Michelle.
Fucking tortoise.
Head up to South Point, go get a $1.50 hot dog, and
Bingo.
I used to play bingo with so I'm good friends with Phil Ivey's family and his mom and his grandma. Many years. Oh yeah, bingo here in Vegas.
bingo with
Sounds
Phil
like a
Ivey's
party.
grandma sounds amazing.
She was amazing. She was amazing. Shout out to Cheyenne Ivey as well, who just started her new business. She's on the cover of Card Player magazine. Let's
Awesome.
go.
Yeah.
Phil's sister, for any of you.
I can't think of a better place to stick a pin in this one. Katie, thank you so much for
Thanks,
your
guys.
insight, for being willing to spar with me. I know I'm a chore whenever it comes to having these discussions. I appreciate your
You're
patience with me.
self-aware.
Thanks,
Big
guys.
shout out to Landon, who's on day 2 of
Come on, Landon.
the Millie Maker. He
need
came in
you.
today with 100 big blinds and a huge deficit. Becker final tabled a win daily, got 4th for 20K, and I
Because win
believe
dailies are going to be the death of you, Burke.
I don't want to talk about it. Honestly, I'm mad because I didn't want to include them in the bet, and now people who are no longer a part of the crossbook were the ones pushing for them to be included in the bet. But yeah, I mean, he's smart. He's playing all of his highest ROI stuff, and Landon's firing 10Ks.
Hey, we're closing with Phil Galfon's tweet as of an hour ago. Winning isn't everything. With the right attitude, a win can be as simple as making a new friend who can loan you money. Here we go.
Uncle Phil, I love you. Come on, man. Let's cut the bullshit here. Winning matters. You're here because you won. All right, that's going to do it for us. New episode of Poker Out Loud is out today. This is episode number 3. Be sure to tune into that. If you guys haven't already, you can check that out at solveforwhy.io. Hit hashtag S4Y in the chat. Follow the link. Sign up today. Katie, thank you as always for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Pacific. Be sure to tune in. We'll see you guys all then.
Peace.
Peace.